It's a staggering humanitarian crisis, the largest refugee influx since World War II. More than 300,000 Africans and Asians have crossed Europe's border this year, double last year's pace. Hundreds more have died trying in just the past few weeks. But the other side of this tragedy is how it will change Europe. Non-Western migrants had already been flooding into Europe for decades. Leaders refused to stop it for many reasons. Some saw migrants as cheap labor. Others were afraid of being branded racist for opposing it. But long before the present crisis, experts were asking if Europe would still be Europe if immigrants someday outnumbered natives.
It's increasingly clear in Western European countries that as the populations approach a tipping point, that there are increasing groups of people who are essentially asking the question, if the political establishment continues to get its way, in 5, in 10, in 20 years' time, how many Germans are going to be left in Germany? How many French people are going to be left in France? How many English people are going to be left in England?
French writer Renaud Camus calls the influx the Great Replacement and says it's the biggest thing to happen to France since the 15th century.
Because what is happening is the population is changing. Can France be the same with a different people? And obviously the answer is no.
For years, Sweden has taken in more migrants per capita than any other European nation. And the experiment has not gone well. Segregation and unemployment among migrants remain high. Predominantly migrant gangs have developed a habit recently of throwing hand grenades at each other during street battles. Last year, Swedish police reported that some areas had become dangerous for law enforcement to enter. Officials denied that the areas are no-go zones, but what was described to us certainly sounded like no-go zones.
Police officers and also fire brigade, ambulance services, when they are coming to these areas, they are attacked. The kids are throwing stones at them, and let's say they are more or less riots. So the police have been attacked by youngsters and so on, of course. So there's a lot of firearms, handguns, especially.
Swedish economist Tino Sanandaji says his country's model faces collapse.
You don't have to be Nostradamus to predict the future. You go to cities like Malmö, Sweden's third city, that are 20 years ahead demographically. That's what the rest of Sweden is going to be. And Malmö has of the 300 Swedish municipalities, it's bottom 10, whatever social outcome you look. Employment, unemployment, school outcomes, poverty.
Sweden's immigration policy doesn't work. The statistics clearly prove it. So why is Sweden bringing in more and more immigrants? And why are opponents of immigration in Sweden and other Western nations branded as racist?
We protest the erecting of fences that just basically make the passage more dangerous.
Sanandaji believes the Swedish left's obsession with immigration and racism has become a kind of religious substitute.
If you want to sort of psychologize, Sweden is one of the most secular countries in the world, okay? They've lost their moral grounding because and the elitists in particular are aggressively anti-religion, right? So, but people, of course, need some sort of spirituality, morality, some values. And instead, their values are anti-racism. So they created this alternative reality for themselves, where it's the 1930s, and they're the guys fighting Hitler.
But more and more Swedes seem to finally have had enough, because the right-wing anti-immigration Sweden Democrats are now the most popular party in the country.
The local municipalities, government authorities around the country, they're all saying it's not working. We're standing before the collapse of the system almost in Sweden. People living in the multicultural chaos that they created, they see this.
Right-wing nationalist parties are strengthening in most European nations because in many cases the establishment seems unwilling or unable to stop the migrant influx. A new poll shows immigration is now the #1 political issue in Britain. Gerard Batten is a founding member of UKIP, the UK Independence Party.
Why would you allow unlimited immigration? It's madness. But it's a political thing, you see, is that so long as you've got these open borders, the political elite, the left-wing political elite can say, oh, we're good people because, we're not racist like the nasty people who want to control immigration.
Almost 1 million migrants have arrived in Germany this year alone. German public support for open borders is falling. Asylum shelters are being firebombed. The fear of open borders in Europe seems to be the same fear that is helping to power Donald Trump's surprising campaign for president. Desperate people in need deserve to be helped, but many are asking what will happen to Europe if the refugee surge doesn't stop. Dale Hurd, CBN News, reporting from Europe.